Calling the December 2020 Audit Committee meeting to order. Take a roll call, please.
Chairperson Ferguson.
Here.
Member Bagwell.
Here.
Member Mayhorn.
Here.
Member Molina. Here. Member Wells. A quorum is present.
Okay, thanks. I'll just go ahead and read, even though there's no public here. Public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Carson City Audit Committee. In order for members of the public to participate in the committee's consideration of agenda item, the committee strongly encourages members of the public to comment on the agenda items. Item itself, no action may be taken on a matter raised under the public comment unless the item is specifically included in the agenda as an item upon which action may be taken. We don't have any public here, so. Is anyone on the line?
I see no public comment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. For possible action, approval of the August 4th, 2020 minutes. Do I have a action to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the August 4th meeting.
Thanks, Ernie. All those in favor? Or second? Aye. For possible action, adoption of the agenda. Any comments, questions, concerns about the agenda? Hearing none. Agenda is, is approved. Meeting items for possible action, discussion, and possible action regarding approval of the internal audit recommendations to the city departments. I guess
I'll start us off.
Okay.
This is Sherry, CFO. So in our fiscal year 21 audit work program, there was a internal and external network vulnerability internal audit that is complete. There were 12 external recommendations and 103 internal recommendations. I want it noted on the record that management has those detailed recommendations. However, the report provided has been obfuscated because, like cash, this is a very vulnerable area of the city that we don't want publicly, noted where all the issues are. So the findings are general and pared down to 5 or 6 findings as opposed to the large number of findings or recommendations, excuse me. And I believe I'll hand it over to Aubrey after that. Or Audrey, sorry. Is Audrey on the line?
does not look like.
I do not see Aubrey.
I'm not sure if this is James Underwood, CIO, for the record. I see Joe Sousa on the line. He may be
There's
here
Audrey.
to comment on this for Audrey.
Looks like Audrey's logging in, actually.
Okay.
Only takes me a minute or two to log in typically. Audrey, can you hear us? Well, we can table this and move on to the findings report maybe and come back to this if you'd like.
This is Joe Sousa. As James mentioned, I did manage the testing that was performed, and I think Audrey was just going to kind of give an overview of the assessment and the engagement. So, I mean, I can kind of jump into the reports or the what we've identified, and then Audrey can kind of circle back once she's connected and kind of provide her overview if that works.
That works. Thanks, Joe.
Okay. Well, thanks for the opportunity for presenting to the board here, committee. We performed two different assessments. One was an external penetration test. And the second assessment was an internal vulnerability assessment. The external penetration test looks at the Carson City network from the outside. So what can an attacker do, knowing that, you guys have a firewall that sits out and connects and filters traffic out to the internet. You guys have applications that may be web-based. So those are the type of things that we kind of looked at from the outside, and using various tools, both automated and manual tools. We were able to, and working with James and his staff on the actual scope of what we were going to be testing. So testing was, scoped out to the external IPs that that the City of Carson owns, as well as the website. As mentioned, there were 5 high findings, 5 medium findings, and 2 low risk findings identified during that portion of the assessment. Some of that came out to, I'm trying to see here, the total number. Looks like there were at a minimum of 254 addresses that we were able to scan. Not everything is obviously live. And the major issues, I think we've kind of addressed this with James and providing him more of the detailed reports. But just at a high level, we're looking at a couple of key areas to kind of look at and address would be, ensuring that systems are, fully up to date and patched. Obviously out of date systems that are no longer supported, will no longer receive patches. And then obviously that puts those systems at much more of a higher risk. So overall, I think in terms of just ensuring that the patch management process is in place and identifying those key systems that, are out of date or coming out of what they call end of life, no longer being supported, would certainly help mitigate those issues. And I would say recommendation from us, obviously, as well as, look at, using our kind of detailed report as kind of a roadmap. So we risk rate everything from the most critical to the lowest rated items, using that as your roadmap for remediation, and then potentially looking at having us come back out, within 6 months and kind of do what we'd call just remediation scans and reperform the testing we did to see, if those issues have been resolved. The internal assessment, is obviously now looking at the internal risks on the internal network at Carson City. Kind of the similar approach. Everything was done remotely. We shipped out a scanning system to James. They helped us connect that to the network. And then from there, we're able to identify systems that were active and identify patch levels, system configurations. There were quite a number of systems that were, I will call, out of date, that basically would need to be upgraded. And I think we've talked to James through that process. Some systems that we're able to identify that were just missing some patches, and then some systems that had some default credentials identified as well. So that to me is more of a system hardening issue. Obviously every time you build a new system, even think of your home workstations, your home laptops, you want to make sure that you're not installing things that don't need to be on there. Locking down services that aren't needed as well. Ensuring you have complex passwords and administrator accounts on those systems. So those were kind of the 2 big takeaways from that on the internal side, as well as just again more of the patch cycle, in the missing systems that were deemed that did not have appropriate levels of patching. All those systems obviously become prone to exploit from an internal attack perspective. Not every system is exploitable, but that's typically what we call kind of the low-hanging fruit in terms of, what an attacker is going to look at. They're going to look at mispatched systems or unpatched systems, and then unconfigured systems, systems that just don't have full system hardening in place. And again, with this, we would certainly recommend, using the detailed report we provided to management, as kind of that roadmap, and then having this reassessed within the next 6 months. Due to the number of findings on this, I don't anticipate every issue to be remediated in that time period, but I would think, there should be some good progress made within that time period. Does anybody have any questions?
Hey, Joe, from a just like an overall standpoint, how many governmental entities do you guys audit, and how did this stack up versus other entities entities that you've audited?
Sure, and I'm just going to speak to like network testing. I mean, we do quite a bit of audit work from an IBLE perspective. You know, in every city, every kind of state government's kind of different in the size perspective, but I thought the level of out of date systems was higher than the normal. I think there's more of a level of risk on the internal side compared to other state city entities that I come across. The external side, yeah, we did find some issues, but I think at the end of the day, you guys stack up kind of at least in that top, 20, 30%. Some other, entities that we've identified in the past on the external side, for whatever reason, tend to be a little bit weaker in terms of their controls that they have in place.
Okay.
And I'd like to comment on that as well. So again, James Underwood, CIO. So I believe that, first of all, it was a pleasure working with IBLE on this, and really appreciate the insight that they've given us. I believe that the penetration test accurately reflects where we've been spending our time and our investments in information security. We've focused more on the external over the past year or so. And we do fully intend to focus on the internal as well. This is a thing that we have to balance with available resources, the risk in terms of the actual vulnerabilities. And the other thing I wanted to mention is the internal findings were conducted from a privileged network. So not every user, or not a typical user, would have access to everything that the auditors had access to. We do have additional controls and network segregation in place that helps mitigate some of those risks. And it doesn't mean that we don't need to address them, because we do need to fully address those. But just wanted to mention that we do have some things in place that help protect against those issues that were found.
Great. Just a follow-up question, Joe. In the areas, I mean, it sounds like internal was the bigger concern. How much did you expand the scope or test work if there were issues identified where we had weaknesses? Did you guys do any additional test work to determine if there had been anyone that had unauthorized access to different systems?
We didn't go to that length, but we did do what we call manual validation on a lot of the findings. So what would happen is, there were a couple of issues where we were able to obtain password or username and password hashes that we were able to break, and then could have potentially used in an additional attack on other systems. So we went as far as that. Obviously, I think the intent of this was to identify those vulnerabilities, identify some, misconfigured systems, and then kind of offer up, hey, we could have gone to the next level, but we wanted to, obviously kind of do this as kind of our baseline. Our first go around, with the city of Carson and working with James and his team. So I think if we were to pursue this again moving forward, we would certainly like to look at that potentially as another layer as things start getting cleaned up. And to James' point as well, again, that is true. I think if I were to, walk into a Carson City administrative building somewhere and just try to plug in, I think it would be very difficult to identify some of these findings. And, I think the base, a good set of base controls are in place to prevent, somebody to just plug in and get access to your sensitive areas, critical networks like your servers that host sensitive information. But once you cross that layer, when with any good, attacker, anybody who has time and money to infiltrate and do this type of work, could potentially break that through that first layer and then identify the issues we did. So, to James' point, yep, we definitely were provided some, extra privileges. But yeah, I would say, continued efforts to get the items we did identify cleaned up.
Yeah, and I'll second Joe's comment about that. Security is all about layers. How many layers can you put in front of the attackers to help prevent them from gaining access? So again, we wanted to be as open as possible in this audit and find the most number of things that we could, or allow the auditors to find the most number of things that they could, so that we know what we can go fix to improve those layers.
Great. Thanks. That was helpful. James, have we had any known intrusions either internally or externally to systems where people got unauthorized? I mean, this hacking stuff is so prevalent. I just had one pop up on my phone here. A big company just got hacked again. Have we determined that anybody's been in our systems on unauthorized access?
We did have an incident with Click2Gov software that was public, that was disclosed publicly. That was an external system that was due to a flaw in that software. We have had some events where people were successfully phished, meaning that they were sent an email, they clicked on the email link, and then subsequently entered their credentials into a bad website, which gives the attacker password and username access, so that the attacker could then turn around and use those credentials to gain access. Fortunately, because we've had a pretty good cyber awareness training program, we have people have contacted IT quickly and kind of fessed up to when they did that. We've been able to address those issues very quickly. So does that answer your question?
Yes, that's helpful. Thank you. Other questions?
I have a question for Joe. In looking at the numbers, I see that on the external, there was 12 findings, but you couldn't hack into the system with your set of resources. Internally, 103 issues, yet both at an elevated risk. Can you tell me how you rank your risk levels? To me, one should seem lower than the other.
The external obviously has a little bit more risk than the internal, just in terms of some of the applications that you potentially have exposed and what people can get access to from the outside. I mean, people are constantly, looking at what they call port scanning. So they're trying to hit, all your IP addresses from the external side on a daily basis. James could go to his logs and be able to pull that kind of information up. The level of findings that we just kind of identified on the external side, we kind of just felt that, yes, we weren't able to do anything because of, again, these assessments are kind of a short period of time. Obviously with more resources and more, manpower, we could certainly, potentially have caused an intrusion, or if we'd done some other areas like, James had mentioned the phishing stuff, we sometimes combine phishing efforts and try to get user credentials, and then we'll log into, Carson City applications, websites, using those applications to see what else we could, obtain from a sensitive information perspective. Internally, certainly, yes, that was elevated just due to the high number of, out of end of life type systems and missing patches that were out there. So that was strictly more of a numbers game versus kind of on the risk side.
And I know that you rank the findings within each other, so I'm assuming
Right.
it would be more lower, or a lot more lower end rankings, which would drive that number up and not make it go above elevated. If I
Correct.
assume, okay. And were you,
Yep.
if you were to just kind of thumbnail it, would you say was the internal issues were mainly out of date software, out of date systems, not patching? That's what it sounds like.
It's kind of three factors again. So yes, you have the out-of-date systems. You have some systems that were missing some patches, specifically some Microsoft patches. One where we were able to obtain username and password hashes, which we were then able to break. And then the third piece of it, I think, gets into system hardening. So again, we found some systems where there were default credentials enabled on various systems internally. So, whether it's, using admin or admin password for a combination and we're able to get access to those systems. Yeah, from there, obviously, taking control of that system and then where can that attacker go from there internally? So those are kind of the big three on the internal side.
And then for Jim, if you could just answer my ignorant question. Are our systems not set up, are Microsoft systems not set up to update automatically? And I'm just curious why they wouldn't be. I know why mine aren't, because I don't want them going during tax season and taking me down. But I'm curious why yours are or aren't.
So, sure, I can take that question. We do have a level of automated patching. There has been there's a backlog of systems that need to be updated that we're working through, and essentially that's a resource question that we need to dedicate more resources to address that. That to this point, we recognized the enhanced risk, as Joe mentioned, to the externally facing systems, and that's where that's one of the areas where we focused our efforts. Another area that we focused our efforts is introducing layers into the systems that provide security for information that people receive from the outside. So in other words, if you receive an email and that email has a link that you click on to download something, in order for you to actually do that, you have to go through about 5 layers of security. So those are the areas that we've focused on more up to this point, and then also segregating out access. Again, Joe and his team were provided privileged access. So those things have taken our time up to this point, but we do fully intend to address the internal patching issues and updating the systems as we go forward.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. So first and foremost, I want to start with, does the IT department accept all of the recommendations or concur with all of the recommendations by Eide Bailey?
I think the recommendations are reasonable. There are some areas where we may not mitigate a specific high-level finding, but in that case, we would want to document the reasoning behind that as we go. But as a general report, yes, we agree with the recommendations and the findings of the report.
Okay, so when I'm looking at the staff's remediation plan for the items that were suggested, first and foremost, unless the light here is not good, it looks to me that you've indicated, I'm not quite sure, but that you could implement everything by July 1st, 2021. So some have sooner dates, but it looked to me that all of the column headers had a date of July 1 or sooner implementation periods. So are you saying you can accomplish these items with the resources that you have at hand? And so your current budget allows you, this is just a staffing priority and things like that of workload?
I think that we can accomplish a lot of, well, essentially the things that are listed here, we can accomplish. This is, it's always a journey, not a destination in terms of information security. So the things that we've put here as actions or the remediation plans based on the recommendations. May not necessarily address every finding that was brought up, but it will allow us to make good progress to reduce those elevated levels that are the summary levels that the auditors found. Does that make sense?
So, yes, what I'm kind of getting to is whether or not is it advantageous then to have Ide Bailey come back in, let's say, next August or September, and then validate the progress? I guess I'm trying to get to that methodology so that we're comfortable as an audit team here that we are indeed moving to the progress and the vulnerabilities are being greatly reduced or eliminated. I'm sure it's a game of whack-a-mole because they're out there trying to figure out how to get into our systems and we're trying to stop them from getting in. But I was concerned a little bit. You had 2 items in which I thought you were indicating no, is it no progress to date, or you were concerned you would not make progress? So I'm a little bit unsure on what you mean on item number 3 on your web development process, because you put no.
Yeah, that's no progress to date.
No
That's
progress
as of
to
today.
date,
And since the
but-
report isn't
Correct.
issued, it was the very critical things that they gone on immediately. And so I think those are the ones that are partial.
Lesser
They're
elevation level?
partial.
Or
Yeah.
partial. Okay, but you do
Correct.
intend, well, some of the comment though also, one of them dealt with your buying off the shelf programs. And you said, well, that would be a prospective, changing our RFP process to make sure that whatever the recommendations of Ide Bailey about off-the-shelf products are in there. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding that we're all on the same page of where we're going here, and so that we're not 6 or 7 months down the line, you say, oh, no, that's not what we meant. So just to have clarity on the record.
To answer your question about the audit in August, I think that would be a great idea. That would allow us to also to show progress and also probably uncover new things that we can focus on to help improve security. The comment about the OWASP guidelines, I think in spirit, that's a great comment, and that we really should include something in our RFP process along those lines. The intent that I had there was to take that recommendation and go back and come up with something that we can agree on to include. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Jim.
I have a couple questions. First, is the city using any software that requires the use of outdated operating software?
Yes.
Okay, so there are some applications that you have not been able to upgrade operating software because of the, okay.
That is correct.
On the cyber awareness training, do you require employees to take that on a regular basis, like an annual basis?
We do not currently, however, that's something that we will be implementing. That's a course that employees are required to take at least one time right now. And then we do send out notification emails with examples of phishing when we see them to keep the awareness going.
Okay. And then on the critical and the high level findings, what is the timeline for fixing the ones that you think are the most critical to the vulnerabilities for the city?
I believe we need to start, we've already started making some progress, and we need to address the critical vulnerabilities, I would say within a month.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, James. I was curious, you said that it was a problem of resources, and I'm just curious, is that financial resources or personnel, or both? And what could we do for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk to that. We had a IT strategic plan that was developed in 15 that put more emphasis on cybersecurity. And that question is about balancing the resources that we have and requesting new resources. I think the best way to answer that is that to this point, we have requested financial resources where possible, and we've gotten good support on that from city management. For example, we were able to purchase new firewalls that enabled good logging and good visibility into what was going on a network. We've been able to upgrade our virus software. We've been able to put in email security software, various things. So the financial support has been good. The other question is we need the right kind of staff and developing staff. That is again a journey. But prioritizing the resources that we've had, I think we've made good use of the people on our team to focus on the things that I just talked about. So that's the external network protection and the protection layers that prevent people from bringing infections into the network. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Just one follow-up question. One of the reasons that this review got put off a couple of years was that we were waiting on a new enterprise system to be implemented. Just in general, how were the controls and I imagine security protocols and stuff like that with new software were better, but just in general, how was security with the new enterprise system?
That's kind of a broad question. I think that the security controls with the new enterprise system are as good as the other systems that we have at this point. One of the things that I would like to do is finish our move to two-factor authentication. Currently, we require that for many things, but not everything in the system, in the city. We were able to get some funding through CARES to implement that to help secure our work from home environments. But as far as the enterprise system itself, it is currently no better or worse than any other system.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Joe or James? We have an action item to accept the audits, right? Back to the right page. Do I have a motion to accept the audits as completed?
I'll make a motion to accept the audits as completed with the proviso that we come back in July for a retest.
Second for discussion.
All those in favor?
On discussion.
Oh, on discussion? Okay.
So the motion, you said that we come back in July, and maybe we need to, I can't remember how much money we reserved, so I'd like you to consider removing that portion, and then we wait to see what we have left in our budget, because I can't, Audrey or Sherry might be able to remind me, what did we leave?
I
'Cause
want
we
to say
left-
it was 5,000 or 10,000.
We left some amount of money, so I'd like to wait and see if that would be effective for Joe's team to do the redo. So I'm with you where you want to go. I just would prefer we not put it in the motion right now. So,
Okay, then I'll remove that part, but just with a reminder from staff to remind
Thank
us
you.
that
that's great.
to get the retesting
Could I
going.
make one additional comment? Could we make that in August? I'd like to be able to have some time to complete those. And I'd also like to correct a comment that I made just a minute ago, if possible.
Sure.
So
Just
in
withdraw
regards to
the
enterprise
motion so
system-
it can be restated after his
Yeah, I'll
comments.
withdraw the motion. Did I say July instead of August? That was a
July.
mistake. That was me being late.
I mean, we have another spring meeting too where we can reevaluate where we're at
Right.
on the corrective action, so, yeah.
Okay,
Go ahead, James.
All right, thank you. To be more clear about the enterprise system question, we do have the enterprise system running on one of the latest versions of operating systems, and we do have a regular patch process on that system. So it would be one of our more secure systems from that standpoint. I just wanted to make that correction for the record.
Okay, great, thank you. Ernie, you want to
I'll-
restate the motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the audit findings.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thanks, Joe and James, for your time. Appreciate it. Item 6B, possible action, discussion, and possible action regarding monitoring and review of the closure of the internal audit findings and recommendations included in the audit findings tracking report, and provide a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to close completed findings and/or recommendations. Sherry?
Yes, so hopefully you all have a color copy. It's in the back. There should be maybe a black and white copy and a color copy. But the ones up for discussion today are the ones in peach. And we can discuss other ones. Those are just the ones I was hoping to discuss and potentially close.
Okay.
So on the temporary staffing audit, I did finally get departments to agree to 2 timesheets and 2 timesheets only. I know Ide Bailey's recommendation was to all use the same timesheet. However, most departments use the Marathon provided timesheet, which does have a disclosure. It got employee signature and the supervisor's signature, so it's a good timesheet. And then the one that was the problem is the lists. So when landfill or streets or parks get a number of employees for a project, that they use a list, and they just have each employee sign off and on the list, and the supervisor of that project signs the list, and there's a disclosure, and everybody's gonna use the same list timesheet now. It took some time, but we got it done. And I don't know if we want to discuss the first item. That was an open DA question. I think Mahala's on the line. They might have a way to potentially close this one today. However, the Nevada Supreme Court Law Library has been closed because of COVID, so they haven't had a chance to do research. So if you're willing to wait, we can just wait on that until it opens, or if you wanna, we can have Mahala tell you the thoughts that we were having on that, because I think it's the fact that Marathon is an outside employer, and we contract with them to send us employees. So they are employees to Marathon, not to us. So I think that, yeah, it's up to you guys. If you want to hear what Mahala has to say, or we can wait.
Yeah, just a quick update.
Okay.
If you could, Mahala, that'd be great. Thank you.
For the record, this is Mihaela Niagos from the District Attorney's Office. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I concur with what Sherry has represented. It is our position today that if you'd like to close it, we are pretty confident in our opinion. However, the last piece is still missing due to the fact that the law library is closed, and we don't have a definite date as to when the law library is going to reopen due to COVID. So I guess the options at this point in time would be to either close the item with the information that we provided, or maybe allow for possibly 6 more months until we can give you a definite answer that will include the legal research from the law library.
Hey, refresh my memory, sure. Was this about the length of time they were working for Marathon for?
Yes, it was about the length of time and whether or not they should be considered city employees or we'd have any liability.
Okay. Did we
Because of
put
that
it,
length
are
of
there any
time.
did we decide any parameters around that?
No, because we do have temporary employees that come back every summer that are paid through Marathon or like, I mean, with the grants right now with the CARES Act, we've got nurses and admin staff that are probably going to be on for the next 3 years until the grant money runs out. So we can't really limit it.
Okay. Sure, go ahead.
So I don't mind discussing. I think part of the issue revolved around that I thought was getting checked under this was one, we had many temporary staff that used to be PERS eligible employees. So they're drawing their PERS and then coming and working. We're going around the system by going to Marathon so that we can employ those employees. And it's really that issue that we were wanting to make sure that no PERS isn't going to come back on us and say, so one of them's a bailiff. I can remember that one off the top of my head was we've had this bailiff for 5 years and we're doing it through Marathon so that the person can draw their full pension. And is there any issue that's really the nut that I think is left here? Is there any vulnerability to the city for having full-time while we're calling them temporary when someone's worked for us for 6 years full-time? Is PERS going to come back and say that was not eligible to be a Marathon? That's the issue that's outstanding, not Department of Labor. Because again, I think you're all correct that the Department of Labor, as long as they're being properly paid overtime and blah, 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 it's going to go back on that employer. So I think the outstanding issue is actually PERS.
Thank you very much for that clarification because I don't even think the DA remembered that. Thank you.
On our radar for a little while, and I think
Yes.
we've even changed the assigned DA from the project, so that makes sense to me.
I think that is part of the difficulty. This is Mihaela Niagos for the record again, is that there has been a change in the assigned deputy district attorney. So I just wanted to, for you to keep in mind that I will continue working on this in the future if you decide to continue this a few more months, and I will be up to date.
Maybe even just a letter, Mihaela, of to PERS, just to validate that we're under no obligation as long as the employee's working for Marathon. We have no duty. There's no local government duty. So something of that nature.
I see.
So I guess right now we'll just look at closing item number 2.
Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Before we go there, I have a couple of questions on this one as far as Fair Labor Standards Act. I mean, I think as long as these people are in supervisory positions or in decision-making capacity positions, I don't think there's a problem with them being temporary employees. On the PERS issue, you can hire people back through the Marathon. The state does it all the time, hiring people back through Marathon. They typically don't do it on a multi-year basis. So I would wonder if the city has any kind of a policy on the rehiring or the use of the critical labor shortage designations that are provided in statute, and whether that is an answer to the critical labor shortage would allow you to rehire that person and have him continue to draw his pension and then be employed as a city employee if that's truly what's going on. I think the critical labor shortage designation is a better option than hiring back through the Manpower or Marathon or whoever you're using. But I don't think there's necessarily a prohibition about using Marathon as far as PERS is going. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
I think Mihaela's got great direction there. So, thank you. So we'll just look at hopefully closing item 2 on this list then today, if that's That's what I'm recommending.
Sure.
Oh,
Or do we want a motion at the end?
do you want to do separate motions for each audit? We can. We haven't in the past. We've just done one big motion, but. Okay. Okay.
Let's,
Or I can do a reminder at the end as to what we're closing and do it all at once. It's up to you guys. Okay.
Make the motions easier.
Okay.
So I move to close item 2 on the temporary staffing audit.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next is the cash handling.
Yes, and these are to recommend closure by the board, to the Board of Supervisors. So, yes, so the cash handling audit, I'm recommending closure of 3, 16, and 18. We did get some cameras installed in the City Hall, so that was one of the issues. And then one of the areas that we collect cash didn't have the cash box in a locked cabinet, and so we have corrected that issue. They have purchased a locked cabinet. And then the last one, 18, is a policy change. The treasurer's office counts the money in the morning, and it's locked up and everything. It's just easier for them to count in the morning. It's their slower time. So they changed the policy to reflect what they're actually doing. Those are the only 2 on that one that I'm recommending closure on.
Hey, Sherry, on the cameras, the status says they're working on getting cameras. Have they gotten cameras, or is it they're still working on it?
Well, so for item 16, yes, that was completed on November 17th. In the actual completion date column, there's 11/17.
Okay,
And then the community development cameras, they're still working on.
okay. But
That's a separate building, so it's,
but it's imminent they're gonna be implemented?
yeah.
Okay.
And then on 17, the other red one, these are those cash handling audits that the treasurer's office was going to start this spring, and then COVID hit. So, they decided to wait because they didn't want to expose themselves to more risk of COVID by going out to other departments and auditing their cash handling. So they've pushed that until the COVID crisis is over.
Sure.
So I guess on number 17, while I understand that there is COVID, I guess I don't understand why the testing of cash handling really is a huge risk factor, because they can do that on their own or with 6 feet social distancing and all of those issues. I guess what I wonder is, are we the most vulnerable right now because nothing's being checked? So I just caution us on that.
They do have a list, and they are making sure that everybody is taking the cash handling training once a year. So it's not that they haven't done anything. They are doing some of it, just the physical on-site cash handling testing that they were going to start doing. They have not, because they just don't want to expose themselves to other people if possible.
And it's not that I don't understand the issue. I don't understand why a mitigation cannot be accomplished so there isn't exposure. I just don't want employees realizing there's no testing, anyway. And maybe our risk is down because do we have as much cash flowing through? Because
Not hand-delivered.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
you see where I'm going with this, though, is there some high vulnerability areas that we just shouldn't let a whole year go by that we're not doing a spot poll? Anyway, it's just my
I'll
comment.
check with the treasurer on that again. I just know that's her concern. So.
That's a good point. I would tend to agree. It's, the cash is still there. We still, there's mitigating there's ways to mitigate, the distancing issue and so forth, so I don't know that it throws out the window that we need to still do these, reviews.
Okay, I will speak with the treasurer.
So on the three, what is it, I guess orange ones, is any other questions on those? Or is the committee in favor of closing these items?
Sherry, did you say 2 items or 3? I thought you said you recommended 2.
There's 3.
Okay, 3.
There's 3, 11,
got it.
16, and 18 that I'm recommending
sure.
closure. Yeah.
Anyone?
And she kind of answered it, but I'm still not clear. I'm so sorry, the lighting here is horrid on these documents, so I know that I read, have the cameras already been ordered for community development, or is that coming in the next budget cycle? So if it's already ordered and it's just a matter of install, then I'm comfortable with closing. So are we at,
No, we have not ordered the cameras yet.
we have not
They're
ordered the
trying to figure out where they want them and how many they want. They're still in the planning phase. They just finished City Hall, so they're kind of hitting each building at a time.
is there a budget for it, or are we
Yeah, I
talking?
believe James has a budget for this one because it's not a big one.
He's on the line, so if I just need confirmation, James, that it's just timing and you're completing it this fiscal year and you have the budget item for it. It's just a matter of, like she said, configuring what cameras you're going to buy. So long as it's in your budget and you're telling me you're just working on, is it 4 cameras or 6 cameras and where are we going to put them? But you're doing it this fiscal year, I'd be comfortable, but I need to hear that.
Okay. We had a couple of changes on that item. Originally, we had a budget of $37,500, which included City Hall and the brick. However, I don't have all the details. I apologize on that that budget item. We had to take some money that we had. I think it was $25,000, and we added some money to it from break fix to establish our city video management system. I don't believe the cost of the cameras at community development is going to be substantial. I think it's probably less than $5,000, and I believe we can cover it with money that we have, but we don't have something specific in our budget earmarked for that. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I can't control the break fix fund or direct it from here, but you're telling me that you really think if you were short in your budget to accomplish it, it's only a $5,000 augmentation request or a break fix? Because I don't know
Correct.
that I consider that a break fix as much as I do an augmentation to complete the project. But it's only, worst case, you think about 5,000?
Correct.
And Sherry, you can help us bird dog this to make sure we can complete the project this year? Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. Sorry, my microphone wasn't on. The 210 fund actually earned an amazing amount of interest last year and had some surplus sales. So the 210 fund has more than I expected. So I think we can make that happen, yeah.
Thank you.
So we're recommending to leave that number 16 open until it's actually.
Comfortable with closing it. I've assurance from the CFO that we can complete the project this year, so.
Yeah, so number 10 was the one, the community development cameras. So I'm not actually recommending that closing because we
Oh,
don't
okay.
have the
Got it.
cameras in place yet.
Got it.
But
the
16
question
is the
is
city
whether
hall
we-
cameras.
Whether we want to go ahead and close 10. So I'm trying to close another one instead of bringing it back before us, if you're assuring me,
Okay.
we just won't go to the Board of Supervisors till the later date and take the whole slew of them anyway. So probably with the augmentation of $5,000 for the
Okay, can I get a motion on which items we'd like to close here?
I move to close item 10, 11, 16, and 18 of the cash handling audit.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. It's unanimous, so we'll move on to temporary staffing audit.
Yeah. We're onto the social media study now.
Social media.
Yes, and there's only 2 items on here, and that's, that is exactly the expected completion date. Some of these weren't expected to be completed until February 2021. So the ones that were expected to be completed were completed. Number 7 and number 11 are completed. And those are the 2 I'm recommending closure on. Ooh, I forgot to change it to a yes on 11.
Any questions on these?
Yeah, I have a question on number 11, and it talked in the notes about some First Amendment restrictions. Is this the right one? And to me, to me, when I read that finding, the acceptable use policy isn't necessarily a First Amendment issue. It's whether or not you are eligible as an employee to use equipment for personal, for going to personalized websites, not necessarily the city's managed websites, is the way I read this finding. And so, so I don't know that the First Amendment rights really apply to this, and so I was kind of confused with what the summary or the notes were trying to get at.
So if I remember this correctly, the archiving software that we're getting to handle this will also retain comments that are deleted, and they're deleted because they're inappropriate. So because we have to have a record, we're a city, of everything that's on our social media page, we got the archiving system to retain everything, but we can still delete comments that are inappropriate because we can't infringe on their right to write that comment, but we can take it off. Does that make sense? Sorry.
So I think that's the question that I actually have is, so we have purchased and have the archival equipment and software. So then do we have a rule as to how one is considered objectionable and then removed and put to the archive so that it can be retrieved? Because I was trying, when I read through this, where's the procedure? So if I find something just use it this way, it's easier. I look on our city Facebook page and I see a comment out there that's vulgar. Let's just be real. So I report it to who? Do I report it to James Underwood, IT, to Rachel, our digital monitor? They review it, and do they have a policy that says remove it from the active site and put it to the archive?
So the archive picks up everything. It just tracks and
automatic?
archives everything automatically, is my understanding.
No, but what's the policy to remove it from the current?
So whoever the director is of that social media site, because there's a recreation site, there's a health site, so whoever is directing that site would be the one to remove it. So you could go through IT help desk and let them know, and they could direct it to the appropriate person to remove it. Or if you know, Nikki, health director, you could send it to her and it would get removed.
Don't have a consistent policy. You're saying it's up to each individual director of their particular site?
Yes, we do not have one person managing all of the social media
No
sites.
one policy.
We have a policy, but not one person that is managing all of the sites.
So is the process by complaint that occurs?
No.
James, maybe, you know what I'm
I
saying is
believe
it,
the person, the administrator of the site is monitoring it and getting rid of things that are inappropriate. And if you happen to see something, it can be reported and removed.
okay.
But
I
James
see
might
James,
have more insight.
I see James clicking in there, but does my questions make sense?
Yes, your question makes sense. And I'm not directly involved with the process right now. As Rachel has moved under city manager. However, I do believe that was part of the risk management and analysis recommendation, because that does provide some insights into those types of things and what might be appropriate to help make those decisions. I believe was the purpose of that recommendation, and that has been done. We did purchase that. That's on item 11 for social media.
And we've done the disclaimer on the social media sites, indicating what the purpose of the page is and stuff. We've done the disclaimers. Somehow I'm not picturing them. I'm on the
I'm
site,
not sure
so,
regarding.
yeah.
I'd have to check that. I was told this one was good to close, so I assume it's there, but I'd have to check it.
James, so
Yes.
if the disclosure is missing, it's something you and Rachel could get on. It's a relatively quick fix to put the disclaimer in the mastheads or whatever.
It is a relatively quick fix. The key part of that is working with the district attorney's office to come up with the language. They were pretty responsive on that. We did something similar for another site that we put up recently. So I don't see a big barrier in doing that.
So the question is, and I see Mihaela is still on the line also. Is she our DA for this meeting? That's great. So should we keep this open and you guys can validate that we have that consistent messaging and disclaimers across the sites? Or do the two of you think in the next 2 or 3 weeks you could resolve all of that anyway, and then we could close it?
I would need to work with Rachel to be sure. I don't think I would be comfortable committing to a specific time frame.
And this is Mihaela speaking. I am available to answer any questions or do any follow-up research on the issue of disclaimers. Because I also agree that it's important to be consistent and make sure that everything that is removed is done on a consistent basis in all the departments.
And I do apologize for not being fully prepared on that question. I'm coming in a little bit late on that, but we'll definitely follow up on that.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the input. I think we're going to leave that number 11 open at this point until the disclaimers issue is resolved. So the real question is get a motion to close item 7 in the social media study.
I move to approve the closure of item 7 on the social media study.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, I apologize for missing that disclaimer and recommending that when it's not done.
Small print.
It is
I
really
know we
small
love
print.
spreadsheets, but it's pretty small.
I know. I've tried to make it bigger, trust me, and it's even harder to read when it's 2 pages, so.
I do like this better than the legal size format, though. It just falls out of everything.
It's true. So the last one I have is the AP&P card audit, and this one is all completed. It was mostly policy updates, just to reflect what we're actually doing. And there's nothing wrong with what we were doing, it just needed to be in the policy. So most of them are that. The one I'm shocked that's actually closed is the duplicate vendors. I can't say this enough. My staff is incredible. I can't believe they got through this whole list. I told them they had a year and they did it in 5 months. I'm just amazed. But they did go through the whole list, and we now have it in the policy that we're going to go through that list once a year. Any other questions?
Sure, real quick on that, is there any way to automate that so that we don't have to review it, so there's some kind of system check between the two systems or two payable files to ensure that we don't end up with dupes?
So there are only 2 people in the office that add vendors.
Okay,
And so they work together really closely to make sure that it doesn't happen. However, in some cases, like the state, they've got different departments. So then 2 different vendors are needed because the check needs to go to a different remittance address. And there are some that are legitimate like that need to be duplicate, but some aren't. So just once a year, they're going to review to make sure that we're not falling off the wagon again. So I don't think it'll be a 5-month process like it was this time. I think it'll be a quick, couple weeks just to review all the vendors and make sure they didn't accidentally both add the same vendor.
okay,
But they shouldn't, we shouldn't have a problem.
okay,
But I did want to make sure we didn't fall off the wagon again, so.
good, thank you. Other questions on these findings and status comments? Motion to close, it's all mostly policy-related stuff, so is there a motion to close?
I'll make a motion to close items 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the APMP card audit.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then I did have the external and internal IT vulnerability audit just in here for informational. Next time we come, we'll do a status comments on where he is, like we always do.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sherry. Item 6C, presentation only, discussion of regarding the FY audit program update and hotline activity with Sherry.
Yep, I'm just going to hand this over to Audrey Donovan. She's our senior manager at Ideally.
Well, hi, everyone. Sorry I didn't get to say hi earlier. It's great to see everyone again. Chair Ferguson, Lori, and thank you, Sherry, for all your input, support, and follow-up work that you've done. It's been noted that the P-card items 1 through 4, we will go in and validate those as requested the first quarter of next year, 2021. As for the fraud hotline, we have not received any reports from the system to date since our last audit committee meeting. We haven't had any other communication with regards to the multiple reports that were related to the airport. So that has been pretty stagnant, radio silent on that front. So I'll move right into the work program and provide an update with that. So we had the internal and external vulnerability assessment that we issued today. We have initiated and have been working on the vehicle fleet engagement, which we are about 90% complete at this point, and we anticipate having the report ready for management, vehicle fleet management, prior to the holidays, prior to year end, so by mid-month, this month, as late as January. So we'll be ready for that for next audit committee meeting to address the vehicle fleet audit, the testing that was performed. We don't see anything critical at this point that we need to share with you and bring to your attention, but that is on track and we are moving forward. We do have a few delays with regards to our last test that we are conducting and wrapping up into the report writing process. So that leaves us with the accounts receivable audit, which we would like to coordinate with Sherry as to an appropriate day, week, or month to kick off that engagement that's conducive for her and her team. as we have the ability to do that come January, but want to make sure that it works with her and her team.
I'll get with you offline. We can talk about a date. I'm wrapping up our audit right now, so anytime in the next couple weeks, but Christmas is probably going to get in the way, so probably January is a good time.
All right, I will table that till January and we'll touch bases then. And as for the remaining budget, I was looking at that as we were going through that discussion, and Lori prompted the question. Based on the budget, the approved budget, there is $6,500 that was left earmarked for additional service. And that is all I have at this time.
Audrey, did that include we had set aside that 10,000 or whatever, did that include that, or was that on top of that?
We set aside 10,000 I have for risk assessment. I can quickly walk you through what the line items were. We had 10,000 for the annual risk assessment.
Okay.
25,000 for the citywide revenue and accounts receivable audit. 30,000 for the vehicle fleet. 35 for the IT vulnerability, the internal and external assessment. 3,000 for follow-up. And 500 for fraud, waste, and abuse hotline.
Okay, that's helpful. Your mic's off.
So we have close to 10,000 for follow-up.
Yeah, all right. Okay, thanks, Audrey. Any questions? Anybody? I think that is the end of the official agenda, other than trying to set a meeting for set up a time for the next meeting.
So that is not an agenda item. I'm sorry. I completely forgot to do it. Mihaela, can we do it during public comment? Can we discuss the next meeting? I know it's just a date. We're not approving anything. We're just discussing.
Setting a future date.
Are you on mute?
She left her computer.
Maybe.
Are you?
Mihaela?
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry, did you hear the question?
I did not hear the question,
Oh,
and I did
okay.
not leave my computer. I apologize.
Oh, okay, no
Could you
problem.
please repeat?
We're wondering if during public comment, we can discuss when the next meeting is. I usually have a separate agenda item to discuss the next meeting, but I forgot. It was totally my fault. So since I forgot, can we discuss that under public comment or no?
It can be discussed under public comment. The question is whether you can take an action.
Oh, no, we don't ever
And
take an
schedule.
action. It's just a discussion.
Yes, but yes, it can be discussed. It can be discussed.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay,
You're welcome.
thanks. And with that, the public is invited at this time to comment on any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. No action may be taken on the matter raised under this item of the agenda. And with that, we'll talk about the Q1 meeting.
So just for the record, I like the Tuesdays at 1:30.
1:30, yes, we'll make sure it's at 1:30.
I like the Tuesdays. Are those
So
still good
I
days?
I checked and pretty much all of March is available. There is a school district meeting on 2 of the nights, starting at 6. So to give us the most time, if we could do 3/2, 3/16, or 3/30. One of those dates we would have all night if we needed it.
Oh, gosh,
Whoa.
no. 3:30? Yeah, the 3:30 works best for
3:30.
me too. How about
Does that work for you, Audrey?
Okay, just just in general,
For the 16th?
I like to check
3:16?
with
On which
3:30?
day was,
3:30
Oh,
3:30
3:30?
on the 16th.
1:30.
at 1:30, yeah.
3:30 at 1:30, which is 2:30 my time, works.
Okay, great.
Works for me as well, everybody. 3:30, March 30th, 2021, believe it or not.
March 30th, is that the day?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Oh, Desi, do you have anybody on the line?
I see no final public comment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And the meeting is adjourned. Happy holidays.
Perfect.